In the vast ocean of Celtic mythology lies a story so ancient, so divine, and so deeply woven into the fabric of Irish culture that, even after thousands of years, its echoes still resonate across the emerald landscape. This is the tale of the Tuatha Dé Danann, a race of beings who arrived in Ireland shrouded in mystery, ruled the land with supernatural power, and when defeated, became something far more enduring than any mortal kingdom. They became the very spirits of the land itself. The name itself carries profound weight. Tuatha Dé Danann, pronounced Tuatha Dé Danann, translates literally as the tribes of the goddess Danu, or the people of the goddess Danu. But this isn't merely a name. It's a genealogy, a spiritual claim, a declaration of divine lineage. Danu, the great mother goddess, holds a place in Celtic mythology comparable to other mother deities across Indo-European cultures. The fact that an entire race traced their origin back to her speaks volumes about how ancient Irish peoples understood sovereignty, power, and the relationship between the divine and the terrestrial. What makes the Tuatha Dé Danann unique in mythological tradition is their ambiguous status. Medieval Christian monks who first wrote down these ancient Irish myths faced an insurmountable problem. How do you describe gods in a Christian framework? The solution was peculiar. They called the Tuatha Dé Danann everything from heroes and kings to fallen angels neutral in the cosmic struggle between God and Lucifer, to ancient humans who had become extraordinarily skilled in magic and druidic arts. Yet, even these careful Christianizing glosses couldn't completely erase what these beings fundamentally were: divine entities, immortal warriors, magical craftspeople who embodied the power of pre-Christian Irish paganism. The origin story of the Tuatha Dé Danann unfolds across generations and continents. According to the Lebor Gabála Érenn, the Book of Invasions, that medieval compilation of Ireland's mythological history, the Tuatha descended from a people called the Milesians ancestors, followers of a man named Nemed. When oppression by the Fomorians, a chaotic, monstrous race, became unbearable, some of Nemed's descendants fled. They scattered to distant lands, learning and growing in mysterious ways. Eventually, they gathered in 4 mythical island cities located to the north of Ireland: Fáilias, Gorias, Morrígan, and Findias. These weren't ordinary cities. They were legendary academies of cosmic knowledge, places where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms dissolved entirely. In each of these 4 cities, the Tuatha Dé Danann studied under 4 master wizards or poets, sometimes called the 4 poets of the Tuatha Dé. Morfesa taught in Fáilias, Ezras in Gorias, Ushias in Findias, and Semias in Morrígan. From these masters, the Tuatha Dé Danann acquired what separated them from all other peoples: mastery of lore, science, druidry, sorcery, magic, and witchcraft. But more than that, they learned craft, the art of creating, shaping, and manifesting will into reality. This emphasis on craft, on skill, on the precise knowledge of how things should be made and done, would define their entire civilization. From each city, the Tuatha Dé Danann carried away sacred treasures, 4 objects that embodied their divine power. The Stone of Fáil, the Lia Fáil, emerged from Fáilias. This wasn't merely a stone, it was a living test of worthiness. Whenever a true king of Ireland stood upon it, the stone would cry out in recognition. Sovereignty itself had a voice. From Gorias came the spear of Lugh, an unerring weapon that guaranteed victory to whoever wielded it. The very act of holding this spear meant triumph. From Findias came the sword of Nuada, an irresistible blade that no enemy could escape once it was drawn from its sheath. Justice itself took the form of a weapon. Finally, from Morrígan came the cauldron of the Dagda, a vessel of infinite abundance that fed all who came to it, never emptying, never failing. Nourishment, fertility, and endless provision became physical objects. These 4 treasures weren't metaphors. In the mythology, they functioned as active agents in history. They weren't mere symbols of kingship or fertility. They were tools of actual power, as real to the Tuatha Dé Danann as spears and shields were to mortal warriors. This distinction matters profoundly. The Tuatha Dé Danann didn't rule Ireland through rhetoric or persuasion. They ruled through the manifestation of supernatural objects and abilities that ordinary beings could scarcely comprehend. In the year 1897 before the Common Era, according to the medieval chroniclers of the Annals of the Four Masters, though modern scholars rightly view such dates with skepticism, a great fleet sailed toward Ireland. The arrival itself was spectacular and deliberately mysterious. The Tuatha Dé Danann didn't arrive in ordinary fashion. They came in 300 ships, but the ships were soon obscured by their actions. As they reached the coast of Connaught, specifically the mountains of the territory called Con Macon Rain, they burned their vessels. The smoke and mist that arose from the burning ships were so thick, so all-encompassing, that it blotted out the sun for 3 days and 3 nights. Some accounts describe them arriving in dark clouds, emerging from mist like wraiths taking physical form. This wasn't cowardice or desperation, burning the ships after arrival. It was psychological warfare, spiritual declaration, and logical strategy all at once. By destroying their means of retreat, the Tuatha Dé Danann announced to themselves, and to whatever powers governed Ireland, that there was no going back. They had committed entirely to conquest. More mysteriously, the burning may have been magical. A ritual cleansing, a transformation from one state of being to another. They crossed a threshold between the other world and the manifest world, and what better way to mark such a passage than by destroying the vehicle of transition itself. At this moment, Ireland was already inhabited. The Fir Bolg, the Bagmen, so called, because they had once been enslaved in Greece where they were forced to carry bags of soil, held dominion. Their king was Eochaid mac Airc, and legend tells that he had received a warning dream of the Tuatha Dé Danann's arrival. When the newcomers landed and the smoke cleared, they made their intentions brutally clear. They demanded that the Fir Bolg surrender half of Ireland. No negotiation, no gradual settlement, no peaceful coexistence. The demand itself was an act of war. The Fir Bolg refused. What followed was the first Battle of Mag Tuired, sometimes called Moytura. This wasn't a skirmish between small bands. This was a pitched battle between peoples, a confrontation that would determine the fate of Ireland. The conflict lasted 4 days. Warriors clashed at the pass of Balgatan. The sounds of combat echoed across the plain, and yet, despite the Tuatha Dé Danann's apparent supernatural advantages, the treasures, the magical knowledge, the divine heritage, the battle was costly and hard-fought. The critical moment came when Nuada, the king of the Tuatha Dé Danann, faced the Fir Bolg champion Shreng in direct combat. Shreng delivered a blow so powerful that it severed Nuada's right hand. Nuada, king of the gods, was wounded. His blood spilled onto Irish earth. Among the Tuatha Dé Danann, as later explained by the goddess Brigid, anyone bearing a blemish or wound could not rightfully rule. A king must be whole, unblemished, physically perfect. There was no exception to this law, not even for the sacred king himself. The Tuatha Dé Danann ultimately triumphed. They slew over 100,000 Fir Bolg and scattered the survivors to remote islands like Arran, Islay, Man, and Rathlin. But their victory was shadowed by their king's wound. Nuada was forced to relinquish the kingship. Enter Dian Sect, the god of healing and medicine, along with Credne, a smith of extraordinary skill. These two craftspeople undertook an impossible task. They would forge a new hand for the king, not a prosthetic in the crude sense, but a fully functional replacement, a hand of silver that moved precisely like flesh and bone, that possessed all the strength and grace of the original. The process took 7 years of meticulous magical work. 7 years of careful incantation, precise metalworking, healing arts pushed beyond their normal limits. When it was complete, Nuada bore the epithet Nuada Ergetlam, Nuada of the Silver Hand. A blemish became a distinctive marker of his power and his suffering. During those 7 years, while Nuada recovered and his hand was being crafted, the Tuatha Dé Danann needed a king. They chose Bres, son of Elatha. Bres was beautiful, accomplished in many arts, and he had a peculiar advantage. His mother was of the Tuatha Dé Danann, while his father was a Fomorian king. His dual heritage suggested an alliance, a bridge between peoples. Yet Bres's 7-year reign became a study in failure and oppression. He lacked generosity, the quality most valued in Celtic kingship. He failed to distribute the wealth and privileges that a good king should freely give. The Tuatha Dé Danann grew hungry. The land itself seemed to grow sterile under his rule. Poets spoke against him, which in Celtic culture meant his reputation was cursed, his name dishonored. When Nuada's silver hand was complete, and the king returned to claim his throne, Bres was overthrown. But unlike many defeated rulers in mythology, Bres did not accept his loss gracefully. Instead, he fled to his father's people, the Fomorians. He appealed for aid, for war host and weapons. Most of the Fomorian kings refused, but Balor, one of their greatest champions, known as Balor of the Evil Eye for the devastating power of his gaze, agreed to raise an army. This brings us to the Second Battle of Mag Tuired, sometimes called the Last Battle of Mag Tuired, the climactic conflict between the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Fomorian host. Before this battle, something momentous occurred. Lugh arrived at Nuada's court. Lugh was the product of a union between Sídhe, son of Dian Sect, and Ethne, daughter of Balor the Fomorian king. He was, therefore, half Tuatha Dé Danann and half Fomorian. His heritage bridged the two sides preparing for war. He had been raised in Tir na Nog, the land of promise, in the other world, by the god Manannan mac Lir. He returned to Ireland as a young man of extraordinary accomplishments. When Lugh approached Nuada's court, the guard at the gate demanded to know his credentials. What art did he practice? What skill would he bring to the Tuatha Dé Danann? Lugh began to list his abilities. He was a skilled carpenter, capable of building structures of extraordinary ingenuity. He was a smith, able to forge weapons and tools of surpassing quality. He was a physician and healer, schooled in the medicinal arts by his guardian Manannan mac Lir, who had taught him all the secrets of curing wounds and ailments that even seemed beyond remedy. He was a warrior of unparalleled prowess with the spear and the sling, trained in tactics and the knowledge of how to inspire armies to victory. He was a poet and historian, able to recite genealogies and ancient knowledge, able to compose verses that held magical power. He was a craftsperson in all domains. In fact, Lugh possessed mastery in every single art and skill that any member of the Tuatha Dé Danann possessed, and many that they did not. He was Samildanach, skilled in many arts, master of all trades. The guard sent him to Nuada, who tested the young man rigorously. Lugh defeated the king at Fichel, an ancient board game of strategy and cunning, not through luck or cheating, but through superior strategy and the kind of insight that comes from understanding patterns others cannot yet perceive. He demonstrated his physical strength by lifting and casting a massive flagstone, a piece of stone so heavy that no ordinary being could even move it, let alone throw it with accuracy. The stone flew exactly where he intended, a demonstration of both strength and precise control. He revealed his wisdom through discourse with Nuada, speaking of history, of strategy, of cosmic principles and sacred knowledge that only the most ancient of the Tuatha Dé Danann possessed. Even Nuada, the ancient king of the gods who had ruled Ireland for centuries, who had been restored to kingship with his miraculous silver hand, admitted that Lugh surpassed him in capability, not through arrogance, but through honest acknowledgement of superior power and skill. Nuada recognized that Lugh should lead the Tuatha Dé Danann into battle. When the battle commenced, Lugh assumed command of the Tuatha Dé Danann forces. But before the armies clashed, Lugh went among his people and asked each of them the same question: "What power do you wield for the people in this battle?" Goibniu the smith stood forth. He declared that, for the duration of the battle, no matter how long it lasted, even 7 years, he would forge replacement weapons for the Tuatha Dé Danann. Every spear that broke, every sword that shattered, would be replaced immediately. But more than that, no spear point crafted by his hand would ever miss its mark, and any flesh that his weapons pierced would never know life again. The Fomorian smith, Dalb, could never match this power. Dian Sect the healer proclaimed that any warrior who was wounded, even grievously, would be healed by the next day, provided only that his head wasn't severed and his brain or spinal cord wasn't cut. Otherwise, even near-mortal wounds would be cured. Ogma, god of language and eloquence, declared that he would enchant the stones, trees, and soil of the battlefield itself, so that they would rise up as an army against the Fomorians, scattering them in terror. The Morrígan, the great goddess of war and fate, who could take the form of a crow, promised to lend her power to the conflict, ensuring that the victory would belong to those she favored. One by one, the Tuatha Dé Danann revealed their powers. And with each declaration, Lugh strengthened the resolve of his warriors, filling them with the courage and confidence of kings and great lords. The battle itself was unlike ordinary warfare. Each day, fierce and arrogant warriors clashed with terrible violence. The sounds of weapons striking shields, the cries of the wounded, the magical chanting of sorcerers filled the plain of Mag Tuired. Warriors fell, their blood soaking into Irish soil. Yet, beneath the surface of this apparent carnage, miraculous forces were at work. Each night, when darkness fell and the warriors retreated to their camps, something remarkable happened. The Tuatha Dé Danann's weapons were mysteriously restored. Swords that had been blunted were returned to razor sharpness. Spears that had been broken were replaced with new ones, forged in supernatural smithies that existed beyond ordinary time and space. Each night, their wounded were healed. Warriors who had seemed near death rose from their pallets whole and healthy, their wounds closed, their strength restored. The Fomorians, meanwhile, faced a growing horror unlike anything in their experience. Their weapons remained blunted and useless, no matter how they tried to sharpen them. Their slain warriors did not return. Their losses accumulated. Their confusion deepened. For the first time, they faced an enemy that didn't operate by ordinary rules, that seemed to cheat death itself, that possessed resources that could not be exhausted or depleted, no matter how fiercely the battle raged. Then came the decisive moment. Lugh faced his own grandfather in combat, Balor of the Evil Eye. Balor's eye had been the terror of Ireland. When his eyelid was opened, and it took 4 strong men to lift it, any who looked upon it directly were paralyzed, helpless. But Lugh, the master of all arts including the throwing of weapons, wielded his magical sling. The stone flew true and struck Balor directly in the eye, piercing through the back of his head. In some accounts, the eye turned backward and shone upon his own people, the Fomorians, spreading confusion and panic. In others, Lugh's blow simply destroyed the eye's power forever. Either way, the Fomorian advantage collapsed. Nuada died in the battle, struck down by Balor's remaining power, but Lugh had avenged him. The Tuatha Dé Danann achieved total victory. The Fomorians were driven back to the sea, to the chaotic depths from which they emerged, never to threaten Ireland with organized force again. Lugh ruled Ireland for 40 years. During his reign, cows gave abundant milk. Harvests overflowed with grain. The land itself seemed blessed. No hunger troubled the people. No disease ravaged the herds. It was a golden age, a time when the divine kingship of the Tuatha Dé Danann reached its fullest expression. The connection between the king's physical and spiritual wholeness and the fertility of the land became absolute. A good king meant abundance. A wounded or weak king meant deprivation. The divine kingship of the Tuatha Dé Danann operated on principles foreign to mortal politics. The king wasn't merely a military commander or a lawgiver. He was a sacred vessel through which cosmic order flowed into the world. His physical form mattered absolutely. A blemish, a wound, any sign of imperfection made him unfit. Yet, paradoxically, Nuada's silver hand didn't make him imperfect. It actually marked him as worthy, as one who had suffered and been restored, who had reached the core of divine power and returned transformed. The Tuatha Dé Danann possessed powers that transcended ordinary magic. They could weave the Feth Fiada, the magic mist or cloak of concealment, rendering themselves invisible to human sight. This wasn't merely hiding. It was a fundamental alteration of how they interacted with the sensory world. They could shapeshift, taking animal or human forms as circumstances required. The ability to assume the form of a crow, a horse, a seal, or any creature demonstrated their fluid relationship with nature itself, their refusal to be bound by fixed identity. They could hear and influence the thoughts of others. They possessed vast knowledge of the past and the future, accessing streams of information that mortals could barely conceive. Time itself seemed to obey them rather than the reverse. They lived in the other world, a realm existing alongside Ireland but invisible, sometimes called Tir na Nog, sometimes Mag Mel, the land of youth or plain of honey. Time moved differently there. A single night in the other world might equal 100 years in the mortal realm, or a century might pass as hours. Suffering, aging, sickness, and death didn't operate in that realm. The inhabitants experienced neither hunger nor thirst, nor the degradations of mortality. It was a realm of eternal youth, eternal plenty, eternal possibility. The Dagda himself, the good god, was said to possess a cauldron in the other world, from which no one ever went away unsatisfied. The Sídhe mounds, ancient burial mounds, and earthen fortifications scattered across Ireland, were said to be entrances to this other world. These weren't mere archaeological remnants of ancient peoples. They were active gateways, dwellings, and strongholds of the Tuatha Dé Danann, even after their visible rule ended. But eventually, inevitably, all reigns end. All dominions, no matter how powerful or divinely sanctioned, must eventually yield to the inexorable turning of ages. The Tuatha Dé Danann's rule over Ireland, their manifest presence in the world as visible rulers and kings, was brought to an end by the arrival of the Milesians, the sons of Mel, who some accounts claim came from Spain, others from Iberia, still others from a more distant and mystical origin point, beyond easy geographic explanation. The Milesians represented humanity in its truest mortal sense, without divine heritage or magical inheritance. They were not descended from gods. They had no treasures of supernatural power, yet they possessed something equally potent: sheer numbers, relentless determination, and the weight of human history itself. According to the Lebor Gabala Eren, the Milesians arrived and demanded Ireland as their rightful possession. The Tuatha Dé Danann resisted with the full force of their magical and martial power. They attempted to hide Ireland itself from the invaders, using the most powerful spells in their arsenal. They wrapped the entire island in magical obscuring, attempting to render it invisible or unreachable to the Milesian fleet. But the Milesians had their own weapon, one that worked against magic itself: a Morrígan, a poet of extraordinary power. A poet in Celtic culture was far more than a maker of verses or a singer of songs. A poet was a being who understood the deep language of creation, who could speak words of power that shaped reality itself. A poet could curse kingdoms with famine and plague. A poet could bless heroes with invincibility. A poet's words carried magical force equivalent to any spell, any enchantment, any ritual. A Morrígan was the greatest poet of his age. When he stood on the Irish shore and chanted a verse of extraordinary power, that verse dispersed the magical mist. That verse revealed Ireland to the Milesians' eyes. What the Tuatha Dé Danann had hidden, a Morrígan's poetry uncovered. When the Milesians approached, the Tuatha Dé Danann fought back with every magical and military resource at their command. They conjured a storm of terrible force, a tempest that was not merely wind and rain, but a magical manifestation of their collective will to defend their dominion. The storm battered the Milesian fleet, sought to destroy ships, sought to drive the invaders back to sea, back to wherever they had come from. But again, a Morrígan spoke verse. His words of power calmed the waves. His poetry brought order from chaos. The Milesians landed and marched toward the Tuatha Dé Danann's stronghold at Tara. The final battle was fought at Tailtiu. The Tuatha Dé Danann, for the first time in their mythological history, were defeated. The Milesians were simply too numerous in their humanity, too grounded in the mortal realm, where the Tuatha Dé Danann's magical advantages couldn't fully manifest. The defeat wasn't shameful or absolute in the way mortal armies experience it. Instead, it was a transition, a metamorphosis. A treaty was negotiated between the three Milesian kings and the Tuatha Dé Danann. The surface of Ireland would belong to the Milesians. The Milesians would be the visible rulers, the mortal kings, the ones whose names would be recorded in human genealogy. But Ireland's hidden depths, the underground realms, the places beyond sight, would belong to the Tuatha Dé Danann. They would retreat beneath the earth, into the Sídhe mounds, into Tir na Nog, into the other world. As they retreated, something profound occurred. The Tuatha Dé Danann transformed. They became what later folklore would call the Ao-Si, pronounced E-Shi, the people of the fairy mounds, the fairy folk. But this wasn't a diminishment, it was a transcendence. The Tuatha Dé Danann didn't cease to exist. They became invisible. They didn't lose their power. They became guardians of sacred sites, spirits of the land, beings of the other world, who could still interact with humans, still influence events, still demand respect and proper ritual behavior. The Sídhe mounds transformed from burial mounds into the dwellings of the Ao-Si. Brú na Boyne, the great mound complex built by the Dagda and associated with the goddess Boan, became a palace of the otherworld. Every ancient mound, every mysterious earthwork, every place where the landscape seemed liminal and strange, might harbor the Tuatha Dé Danann in their new form. They became the fairies of Irish folklore, though not the tiny winged creatures of later European fantasy. They were tall, beautiful, powerful beings who had merely relocated their existence to a plane parallel to human Ireland. The deprived of the Tuatha Dé Danann didn't cease. They continued to interact with human kings, to demand respect, to punish those who desecrated sacred sites, to reward those who honored the old ways. Many Irish royal genealogies include Tuatha Dé Danann ancestors or lovers. Connections to the fairy folk weren't shameful but prestigious, indicating a family's antiquity and power. Stories like The Wooing of Etain, where a Tuatha Dé Danann goddess was brought into marriage with a human king, show how the two realms remained intertwined even after the separation. The Tuatha Dé Danann represent something profound in human consciousness. The idea of a golden age of direct divine presence, now hidden but not destroyed. They embody the Celtic understanding that the other world isn't distant or irrelevant, but intimately connected to the material world, separated only by the thinness of veils and the failure of human perception. In their transformation into the Ao-Si, they became eternal, freed from time and death, able to influence human affairs indefinitely. Their legacy shaped Irish spirituality, folklore, and even language. Lunasad, one of the 4 major Celtic festivals, bears the name of Lugh in its Gaelic form. August in Irish is called Lunasa, forever commemorating the god. The respect for Sídhe mounds, the prohibition against disturbing certain landscape features, the careful propitiation of the fairy folk, all these practices that persisted into historical times were echoes of reverence for the Tuatha Dé Danann. When Christianity arrived in Ireland, the church faced these myths. Rather than destroy them, Irish monks transcribed them, preserved them, even as they tried to reframe them within Christian mythology. Some interpreted the Tuatha Dé Danann as fallen angels. Others saw them as ancient humans of extraordinary skill. But even Christianity couldn't erase them entirely. Saints sometimes had encounters with the fairy folk. The magical aspects of the old tales seeped into Christian hagiographies. The Tuatha Dé Danann remind us that mythology serves functions beyond entertainment. These stories encode cultural memory, philosophical insights about power and kingship, psychological understanding of the hidden realms of consciousness. They speak to the human yearning for direct connection with the divine, for a time when gods walked the earth and magic was real and manifest. They suggest that such connection isn't entirely lost. It's only hidden, accessible to those who know how to see, to listen, to respect the sacred places and practices. The complete story of the Tuatha Dé Danann, from their mysterious arrival in clouds of mist through their divine kingship and magical power, through their wars against the Fomorians and eventual defeat by the Milesians, to their transformation into the eternal Ao-Si, is a mythology of transcendence. They didn't vanish. They transformed. They became the invisible guardians of Ireland, the spirit people who dwell in the hills and mounds, who influence the seasons and the harvests, who reward honor and punish desecration. In exploring this mythology, we're not simply reading ancient stories. We're engaging with a framework for understanding the relationship between the visible and invisible worlds, between temporal power and eternal presence, between mortality and the possibilities of transcendence. The Tuatha Dé Danann continue to live in Irish culture, in the respect for the Sídhe, in the festivals that bear their gods' names, in the undying sense that Ireland's visible landscape is the home of invisible powers. If you've found yourself fascinated by the deep mythology of Ireland and the Celtic world, if you've wondered about the nature of the otherworld and the enduring presence of the divine in the natural landscape, please like and subscribe to History Scrolls. We journey deeper into the mythologies that have shaped human consciousness, uncovering the layers of meaning beneath the surface of ancient stories. The Tuatha Dé Danann await your discovery in the hills and mounds of Ireland, in the quiet places where the boundary between worlds grows thin. Thank you for journeying with us through their legendary realm.